All right, Magnus plays knight e4, and that's a blunder.
No!
All right, let's see how Magnus blunders against Aryan Tari, his countryman, in this one. But before we begin, can we all just take a moment to admire how ridiculously good-looking this guy is? I mean, I don't even swing that way, but man, he might be Norway's number 2 in chess, but he is Mr. Norway in my book. All right. Anyways, back to the chess. We have Magnus with the white pieces in this one from the Norway Chess Blitz tournament in 2023. Roy Lopez on board. All right, knight e7, knight c3, a bunch of knight moves. Okay, h4, knight d4, hitting this bishop, which is protected by the knight. Okay, Magnus chooses not to part ways with his light square bishop. h5, d3, bishop e7. Okay, knight jumps in. Aryan says, "Get out of my house, you pesky knight." Magnus takes the bishop. Okay, Aryan recaptures with the queen. White develops his bishop with tempo, is blocked by the pawn, and comes back. Well, he might be thinking, what was the point of that? The bishop should have just developed to e3 straight away, but this f6 pawn move is pretty weakening. It opens the eyes of the light square bishop and actually prevents Aryan from castling. So probably better to think of this bishop g5 move as having provoked this f6 weakness. Anyhow, okay. Bishop is hit. All right. Well, now we see why Aryan was okay with playing this f6 weakening move. He was planning to take out the bishop all along. All right, we have d6, opening the door for this bishop to come out. Knight repositions. Bishop develops with tempo against the queen, blocked by the pawn and retreats. Okay, well, that was complete deja vu there. All right, rook a6, hitting the pawn, which steps forward. Magnus doubles along this half-open a file. Castles. Okay, Magnus goes uncastled to king f2. Aryan pushes his pawn forward. Queen is hit, sidesteps. Queen a5. Aryan pushes his pawn forward, and look at that. Look at this connect 5 of pawns there. But the computer actually doesn't like this move, yeah, because it takes. This b pawn is just hanging. Okay, but Magnus doesn't even take the pawn. Rook e1 instead. Okay, bishop f7. Okay, maybe just getting it onto a protected square so the queen can move elsewhere. Rook takes on a7. Okay, computer prefers taking this b5 pawn instead and making the c pawn isolated, but okay. Takes on a7. Okay, a pair of rooks comes off the board. Knight takes on h4. Is that a knight sacrifice? Why can't Magnus just take back? Okay. Yeah, not a knight sacrifice because of this queen d4 move, and one of these pieces is going to be lost. If the king moves here, obviously the bishop is lost. If the king moves close to the bishop, yeah, throws in another check and then scoops up the knight. So, all right, not a knight sacrifice. So Magnus actually doesn't take the knight, hits the queen instead. Okay, queen d3. Magnus takes on c5. Okay, knight retreats back to safety. Pawn takes. Ugh, look at how ugly these 3 pawns are, but it doesn't matter how ugly it is because this pawn is getting ready to roll. All right, Aryan plays e4, ready to crash through. Magnus doesn't even flinch. Pushes his pawn forward. Okay, finally Aryan comes back with the queen to stop the pawn. Knight c4. Pawn takes. Knight d6. Okay, trying to escort this pawn to promotion land. Aryan doesn't care. Plays f4, opening the door for the queen to swoop in, which it does. Okay, rook g1, protecting against this g3 check. All right, knight h4, threatening this brutal check on f3. Okay, Magnus doesn't allow that to happen, takes out the knight. Aryan recaptures with check. The king is rocked back. Check. Check. And scoops up the pawn on b3. Wow, look at that queen. Just flying across the board. Okay. Magnus plays queen d4, threatening mate. All right, Aryan throws in this check first, and then g6. All right, Magnus plays knight e4, and that's a blunder. Oh, man. Oh, man. All right, can you spot Aryan's next move here? Yeah, nothing too tricky about this one. It's just a mate in two. Starting with bishop c4 check. And yeah, Magnus resigned in this position because, yeah, king e1 only move, and that's mate. So just rewinding a few moves here. Yeah, what was Magnus's idea with knight e4 exactly? Well, it's to take advantage of this diagonal that was created after this g6 move. If Aryan is playing any other move except this bishop g4 check or c4 check, or moving the rook kind of out of the way, it's just mate in a couple more moves. So just to illustrate, if we make this random queen b3 move, yeah, it's a mate in three. Starting with knight f6 check. The knight covers these two squares, so the king needs to move into a discovered check position. The knight steps aside, discover check, and anywhere the king moves, that's mate. Just one wrinkle in this is, yeah, if the queen, instead of, you know, making some random move like queen b3, if the rook were to move away to c8, for example, then, yeah, this isn't exactly working because the king can move here and is not in a discovered check type situation. And yeah, this is a completely drawn position. But yeah, pretty instructive actually. If your opponent's pieces are positioned kind of in this structure, step one is to get the queen slicing through this diagonal, and then being in a position for the knight to deliver check on f6. So that was the idea by Magnus. He had the right idea in mind, but yeah, he just missed this one killer move by Mr. Norway. Bishop c4 check. And yeah, Magnus resigned in this position and lost the game. Alright, in this next game we have Magnus with the black pieces from the Norway Chess Tournament in 2022. Owen's defense, denoted by this early fianchetto of the black queenside bishop. Aryan takes full control of the center here. A couple more developing moves. Alright, Magnus strikes at the center with c5, castles, takes, knight f6, okay. a4, discouraging this b5 pawn advance. Okay, all the pieces get fully developed now. The knight jumps into c5. Aryan brings his other rook into the game on e1. Magnus strikes at the center with d5. Okay, Aryan strikes back. Knight jumps in. Wow, a lot of tension here in the middle of the board. Aryan pushes his pawn forward to f5. The bishop immediately makes use of that square opened up by that pawn move, no longer controls this g5 point. Okay, a pair of bishops comes off the board. Rook f3, maybe looking to double along this f-file, or maybe do kind of an up and over. All right, takes. Rook hits the queen. All right, notice it's defended by the knight. Queen sidesteps. Is hit again. Defended by the queen, sidesteps. Okay, knight f5, threatening this fork here. of the king and queen. This queen is just getting bullied around. Okay, Magnus defends against the fork with his rook. Bishop takes knight, recaptures with the pawn. Knight d6. Okay, yeah, this fork isn't available anymore, so looking to stir up trouble elsewhere. Okay, rook sacrifice. Rook takes pawn for a pawn and this pesky knight here on d6, okay? Still equal position. The rook is hanging, sidesteps. Okay, hit again. And Aryan ignores it and attacks the queen instead, sidesteps. All right, now the rook comes all the way back. Okay, we have some queens repositioning. All right, here we go. Aryan plays rook f2. Yeah, potentially looking to double along this f file after this rook moves out of the way. This f7 point is a little soft. Okay, Magnus puts an end to all that, just plays f5 instead. Okay, Aryan g3, discouraging this pawn push in the future. King steps off the back rank. Knight b5. Okay, looking to hop into d6 here, where it would fork the rook and the bishop. The rook just steps forward, defends both the king and bishop along the 7th rank. b3 played. All right, defends that a4 pawn, which was hanging. Magnus repositions his knight back to e6. Yeah, it would ideally love to get to this d3 outpost if it were available, but it's currently not. So e6 it is. Knight does hop into d6, hitting the bishop, which sidesteps. Okay, Aryan plays c4 and says, doesn't your bishop look pretty dumb? All right, Magnus jumps back in with his knight to c5, and that's a blunder. That's a blunder. All right, why is it a blunder? Okay, can you spot, yeah, Aryan's next move here? Okay. Yeah, it's this knight sacrifice on f5. And the point is that once you recapture with the pawn, which is what Magnus played, you're open to this queen check on g5. Brutal. The king is rocked back. Yeah, rook takes pawn, and Magnus resigned in this position. There's just too many threats here. The queen is hit, the rook is hit, and you have mate threats here on d8 and f8. So just to illustrate here, if you're trying to save the queen and defend this rook, yeah, that's just mate. So just rewinding a few moves here. Yeah, the computer in this position after this c4 move to block out the bishop just likes the bishop stepping back to b7 and being open to this bishop for knight exchange. Completely equal position here. Magnus had to keep this knight here on e6 to defend or cover this sensitive g5 point and protect against this knight sacrifice. So obviously if the knight is kept here and you know, b7, this knight sacrifice obviously isn't working because, yeah, this knight covers that point. But the moment Magnus, yes, steps away from defense of this g5 square, this knight sacrifice becomes available. And yeah, just a brutal check on g5, completely shattering Magnus's defenses. And yeah, he missed that one. And that's just game over. So that's all for this video. If you enjoyed it, please hit that like and subscribe button, as I'd love to continue showing you blundering games like this one. So that's all for now. Take care.